Season 1 of Tekken 8 has concluded, and we have been able to experience all the content that it has to offer. Some people really like this season, while others were not happy with it at all. In this video, I want to take a look back at the season and review it for what it's worth, and also share my opinions on what I think of the season. First off, let's look at the major part of the season, the most important part of the season, that being the characters. Whenever it comes to a fighting game, the most interesting part of the season are the characters that are going to be presented to you. Everyone is very interested to peek behind the veil and see what characters we're going to actually get to play with, and also to see how those characters have been changed from their previous iterations to fit into the current game. The selection of characters provided to us in this season included Eddy, Lidia, Heihachi, and finally Clive. I need to be clear here. I think this is a very weak lineup. This is because there were no new Tekken specific characters. Excluding Clive, who is from Final Fantasy, we have 2 returning base characters, that being Eddy and Heihachi, and 1 returning DLC character, that being Lidia from Tekken 7. So Lidia was a DLC character in Tekken 7 and also a DLC character in Tekken 8, as opposed to someone like Leroy or Zafina, who were DLC characters in Tekken 7, but they're now base roster characters in Tekken 8. Seems like a weird choice, right? But I think they did this for a reason. This lineup seems like a very simple way to reuse past assets and pad the game long term, giving it an additional season. The reuse of assets is a running theme for this season. Most of the battle passes or fight passes have had reused assets from Tekken 7. But let's move on. Let's look at the individual characters. Let's look at Eddy first, since he was the first character released for this season. When it was revealed that he would be the first DLC character, many players were upset. They were upset that he would not be a base character like he was in Tekken 7, which I understand. But at the same time, he had a pretty low play rate. So I can see why he was removed and added as DLC from a business perspective. People liked the character, they were interested in the character, but they weren't gonna main him. And he had low enough play rates and pick rates in the previous game that maybe he doesn't need to be in Tekken 8. But I can see how upsetting it was for them to remove him. Now, even though he wasn't as popular as other characters in terms of gameplay, Tekken fans liked him being in the game. And I think it's specifically for this. 2 reasons. He was a long-standing character in Tekken, so people are used to him. It's kind of like the furniture, right? But the next reason is Eddy is the only capoeira specialist available in Tekken right now. There were a few more, but for now, Eddy is the only character that specializes in capoeira. Removing him felt like the developers were moving away from that martial arts spirit and martial arts variety that is presented in Tekken. And players didn't really like that. Didn't sit well with most players, especially with the fact that Lei Wulong is no longer in Tekken. It brings up a weird case, I know, but Lei Wulong was not supposed to be in Tekken 7, but players really wanted him in the game. They really liked him being in the game, even if he wasn't top tier, even if he wasn't very good. He provided martial arts variety. Even though he had gimmicks, it took some skill to learn him, and people wanted to keep that spirit in Tekken. And it seems that that is maybe changing. We'll have to see if the future DLC characters make a difference, but people didn't like what was happening, specifically the changes that were being made, taking out content and re-adding it or giving it back to us later for a price. Eddy was the first example of that, or the first major example of that. And that is the running theme of this season, reusing assets. Now, let's move on and look at Lidia. She was the last DLC character for Tekken 7, and now a DLC character in Tekken 8. She also wasn't very popular of a character, but they put in the effort in making her, and I think they didn't want to waste the efforts that they invested into making this character for Tekken 7, so they included her in Tekken 8. It takes a lot to make a new character, and it takes time for fans to get situated and get used to a new character. It takes time for people to try her out and see if they're actually interested in using her. She's still relatively new, so adding her into Tekken 8 doesn't seem like that far-fetched of a thing. Next up is Heihachi, and this is a pretty interesting case for me. I think the dev team wanted to use Heihachi and take advantage of the hype factor. I think this is one of those characters that is near and dear to many people. They're used to seeing him. They think he's really cool. Now, most players, even if they don't play Heihachi, they like him. Even if they don't main him, they've played him before, they've tried him out, they've seen him in the story, they like his character. Now, even though they don't main Heihachi, he has a similar effect like Eddy and Lei Wulong, where I think players just want to have him in the game. And even though he shares this effect with Eddy, he's a special case. Heihachi has been a main player in the story for many years, as opposed to Eddy, who is not that important to the story. Talking about Heihachi, there's a very important point to talk about with him in Tekken 8, and this would be his death. Heihachi was said to have been dead before the release of Tekken 8, so he wouldn't have been a character in Tekken 8. This was exaggerated to the point of being a lie. Even though it was said by Harada that Heihachi would be dead, he's not coming back. So players took his word for it. However, since we're at the end of the season, Harada said one thing, did something else. I am less likely to believe whatever it is Harada and the team is actually going to say about the game going forward. For what it's worth, Eliza may come back. I mean, Harada said that they wouldn't bring back Eliza, but Heihachi was said to be dead, but here he is. Back to Heihachi. Him coming back, I think this nullified or reduced the value of his death and what he was trying to do regarding the devil gene and his goal of getting immortality. It's pretty strange that the immortality aspect seems to have diminished for his character, but that's something completely different. Moving on, I think Heihachi's return also reduced the significance of Reina as a story tool, being the spiritual successor of Heihachi. For me, it was actually interesting to see Heihachi being dead and his legacy living on through Reina. Like, you basically thought you got rid of him, but no, I have my understudy, I have a replacement. That was pretty funny, I really liked that. And Reina actually embodied a lot of what Heihachi had, that arrogance, that willingness to fight, that, a demon spirit, right? Bringing him back erased that or diminished its effectiveness to me. The story situation with Heihachi could have also been better. If they did want to have some level of mystery associated with Heihachi, if they did want to elicit an emotional response, I think, and this is just a loose idea, you can tell me what you think about it. I think they could have said that he was missing and provided a side story where Heihachi fought maybe Akuma or Geese and he sustained some damage like a head injury, thus the amnesia. This can also lead to the Tekken monks making an appearance to help Heihachi. It could be that Heihachi was working in the background to develop an organization and called it the Tekken monks, and they were supposed to work in secret, but him sustaining enough damage, they had to make an appearance to save him, and by saving him they took him away, went into hiding so he could recover. Him being away, this then moves to Reina deciding to make an appearance in his stead, because Heihachi always had the plan in the background that if/when he died, she would take over for him. Or it could be the case that she decided to do it on her own, right? I think there wasn't a need to write the story the way they did. They could have implemented his return in a more digestible way without saying he died. No need to lie, embellish, and exaggerate. I wanted to also take a look at the balance of Tekken 8. I think Tekken 8 was actually released in a very unique place. It was released at a time when the Tekken World Tournament was being held very close by, so implementing any sort of major patch would upset things to such a degree that the contestants wouldn't really have an opportunity or time to adjust. And I don't think that there would be enough time or information for the Tekken team to properly balance the roster. Any changes that they might have implemented might have been a bit too quick, and it may have caused more issues than they would have wanted. Just trying to be fair here. There are many characters in this game and every character has over 100 moves. So trying to fix everyone in such a short window, not really realistic. Now, to be fair, they did implement some minor patches and fixed some serious widespread issues. They fixed some bugs such as there was actually a throw bug, but they were actually able to fix that in a relatively short window thanks to the community saying, hey, this is a big issue, we need to get it fixed ASAP. When it came to underperforming or overperforming characters, I think they were pretty light-handed. Top tier characters like Dragunov, Jin, Feng, Yoshimitsu, and Nina were largely unchanged throughout the whole season. There weren't any major changes that really disrupted their performance in the game. And that could be said for the lower tiers like Leroy and Asuka. They didn't really see any major changes either. Long story short, balance changes did not really shake up the roster. They fixed some things, like I think Leroy had some serious issues and they were able to fix that, or fix those issues, but it didn't really move him up in terms of the tier list. One point I do want to share here. If you do want to climb ranks using a top tier character like Dragunov, I would recommend you do it now, before Season 2 is released, because it could be the case that these top tier characters are going to get balanced out to the point where it's not going to be as easy to climb ranked with them. So just some advice: if you want to take advantage of the situation now, do it now if you really want those ranks. Otherwise, don't worry about it, right? If you really like the character, then keep using him. Let's move on to the Tekken Fight Pass. Now, the Fight Pass is Tekken's attempt at the ever-popular Battle Pass that we see in so many other games. There is also the inclusion of a shop where you can buy exclusive skins and other content. The Fight Pass is content that is meant to keep you playing on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And this is beneficial for the game, or for the company running the game, any game, right? And it keeps players playing when they otherwise wouldn't want to play, simply because they're logging in and playing just to complete their daily missions. The Battle Pass does indeed have daily missions and I believe weekly missions. Now, the way the pass is implemented is not necessarily to provide content for the players. I don't think it's really there to provide interesting or amazing content and rewards. Instead, I think it's there to maintain good retention for the game. Forgive me here, but let me just share what I think. The content in the Fight Passes haven't been very good. Some items seem like they've been pulled in from an asset store. Like if we look at the current Fight Pass at the making of this video, we look at, like, let's say the Brilliant Jewel. I was able to find an asset online that looked very similar to the Brilliant Jewel. And I'm not saying that they specifically got this specific item and put it in the game, but I don't think it's good when you can easily find copies of other items in the game. Like in the first Battle Pass, they had a sphere, like if you boot up any 3D modeling tool, you can make squares and spheres and other shapes rather easily. So it's really just them making a sphere and putting it in there, right? So it doesn't really seem to me that there's a lot of effort being put into the rewards of the path. Well, some of them, right? There are some good ones, but it's like digging through garbage and then you find something good. You're still covered in trash. The Fight Pass rewards include a lot of reused content from Tekken 7. And when it was first introduced that there would be a Fight Pass, most veteran players understood that, hey man, you're gonna reuse assets and give it to us. That doesn't seem cool. You're gonna take stuff from Tekken 7 and drip feed it in the Battle Pass. And that's what happened, right? Now, I gotta say, there were some interesting options or items and rewards in the Fight Pass, but not enough to actually be considered interesting or good. To me, there aren't enough interesting items to customize the playable characters. Even though you're paying for this content, you're paying for the Battle Pass, the items provided to you seem such low quality that you have to question, why am I even paying for this? It's really just FOMO, right? You get the Battle Pass in the hopes that, hey, something's probably going to be good in it. I don't want to miss out on stuff. And for me, I like to customize my character. But seeing the options presented in the Fight Pass, it kind of diminished that aspect of the game for me. It's not as fun as in Tekken 7. Another point is the fact that you have the Fight Lounge avatar. Now, these avatars actually do get items in the Fight Pass. I don't think that's good. I think that's splitting the design development team from being able to make very cool and interesting rewards for the playable characters that you actually use in the match. You're taking the resources from creating that content and putting it into making content for the lounge avatars. I don't think that's good. I personally don't care for it. I rarely ever go into the lounge, but I understand that there are other players out there that may really enjoy it. So there's a split there. The placement of items in the Fight Pass is very strange. Well, it's not strange. I understand why they did it, but it's still not a good thing to see, to actually experience. For example, they put the female Santa costume at the end of this current Fight Pass. Most people are not going to make it that far until after Christmas. Putting it closer to maybe the middle would make more sense. But they clearly put it at the end to incentivize people who really want that to keep playing up until the end of the Fight Pass. That's just very strange to me. They should have provided something at the end that was, still something that people would be interested in getting, and keeping the female Santa costumes closer to the center or earlier, so that way people could get it and use it for Christmas. But Christmas is now past and gone, so you can use it next year. Maybe. I don't know. I also think it would be good if they provided the designers and the 3D modelers some more freedom so they could make some more interesting items. Maybe even create some items based off of current fashion trends, right? I think that would be interesting to do, giving them that freedom and also providing some interesting content for the players. I would be really interested in it, right? Having a wider variety of customization options based off of current or even past fashion, like real world fashion, and not the weird looking stuff. That would be interesting to me, more so than having reused assets and spheres and little gems. They added little gems. They added a brilliant jewel to the fight pass. Now, I would like to give credit where credit is due, and I'm going to do that. I think they did a good job in implementing the small necessary changes for the season, but also the big ones. The big one would be the user interface. I really like the fact that they listened to the fans and implemented one thing that people have been asking for quite some time, and that is adding the option for you to basically set whatever character you want as the background character for the menu. I really like and appreciate that. They put out the effort to actually add it. They didn't have to add it. They could have just ignored us, but I really appreciated that they added that into the game, and they're going to add more things to the game. So when it comes to features, I think this season was really good with regards to maintaining and adding new features to the game. So credit where credit is due. Overall, I think this season was pretty lackluster. I wouldn't say that it was bad. It did have some hype moments. But looking back, too many things were taken from Tekken 7 than providing us new things. I really preferred it. I really would have preferred it if they added in a lot more new things to the game with regards to customizations and characters. The DLC characters, only one of them being new, but that one new character is a Final Fantasy character. That doesn't sit well with me. It would have been nice to have at least one new Tekken character. That would have been really appreciated, as opposed to a new character from another franchise. And with regards to the balancing, I can see why they decided to hold off on any major balance changes. So that's all fair to me. For me, overall, it was pretty underwhelming for a season. There are many more, so there is always hope that season 2 is going to be good. Season 3 is going to be good. Just because this season was lackluster doesn't mean that the whole game is trash. I'm not going to say Tekken 8 is trash. It's still fun. I still enjoy it. I still like playing it. But there are some issues with regards to the choices that are being made. But they made some big promises for season 2. Let's see how it goes. And I also want to know, what do you guys think about this season? Do you think it was good? Do you think it was terrible? Like, I understand that some people really hated this season, and I understand why. But there were some good things. There were some things that we needed to be fair on, but let me know what you guys think.